Welcome back, fellow armchair generals. This is Gamer 1745 here with my continuing playthrough of Imperator Rome. We're playing as Ptolemaic Egypt, and we're talking about things while doing it. And currently, one of the things we're talking about is the series I, Claudius, as well as the HBO series Rome and other historical dramas. Okay, one of the main themes of I, Claudius, and all, to the best of my knowledge, all of the deaths, people that died in both the book and the TV series, are correct in their deaths. But what they take in presumption is a lot of people just died, back then, just generally speaking. And we don't know maybe how well they knew why people died, from what sicknesses or, get an infection from a cut or a scrape or, okay, cloth would increase. Oh, that's local. Base metals. They have base metals. No, that would help. Okay. So we don't always, sometimes it is recorded that they died in battle or someone assassinated them, stabbing with a knife or whatnot like that. And so those kind of deaths are, done as such in Claudius. But what they make out in this series, particularly, is Livia. Poisoning a lot of people. She comes off in the series as a massive poisoner. A lot of the family, to clear the way for Tiberius to become emperor, because he is more of the adopted son of Augustus, not his own son. And Germanicus, Caligula, father, was very popular and at least comes off in the series and general histories as somebody who would have been a good Roman ruler or an effective Roman ruler or whatnot, however you want to categorize that. And so, no, I don't want to do this. So there's that, and that is speculation, I think, almost entirely by Graves. Not that I'm saying he's wrong or not that it's likely true, but I don't think we have good period evidence for that. Yeah, this is, well, I guess we'll get it from our own and just increase taxes locally. Hey, Thomas. No. I like both. What I like about this is a real-time game where Rome 2, which I played, you can check out on my YouTube channel, my playthrough that ended because of a bug. So I was playing a mod and the bug was unpassable, so I never went back and restarted. Tried to get past the bug. It was crashing on the other turn. It's turn-based. I like this better. There's a lot of really good things in Rome 2. I've not played the original. Some people like that better, I know. Rome 2, I like that as well. I wish some of the aspects from that game were in this. I think I like this a little better, but that is also very good and very close to being population capacity up. That could be good. Maybe we'll grow. Oh, let's get another. I want an import. Okay, well, maybe we can import grain. Yes, good. Imports, we make more money from imports than we do from domestically bringing in resources. You'll still get the benefits from it, but won't get as much income. So Yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of good things with Rome. I like the combat system with Rome, too. For some reason, maybe it's just my sort of history of wargaming, I like the Field of Glory 2 miniature sort of turn-based I know it's sort of strange that I like this real-time better than turn-based, but I just sort of like that. I don't know if I can put it into words right now, but a few things sort of bug me with the sort of the AI and dealing with attacking cities and whatnot with the real-time combats in Rome too and whatnot. So field battles I liked better there. Okay, help them work. We will help them work out the issue. So that will cost us. I don't know if I should. Hey, I'm more looking at the results than the story here right now. You see, Alexander. So we will on cultural happen. Yes, we'll do that. We'll pay the 15 political influence. Okay. Boeotian Helmet Centuria. Yeah, I guess we'll do the tribal output improvement. We can also help on cultural happiness, but okay. Now, since we started a new episode, what we're going to do here is we're going to start one of the missions now. We have a reasonable amount of money saved up. We're getting a reasonable amount of monthly income. We're keeping two approximately 20,000 man armies. So, which, well, we can look here, just the general, yep, I'll hover over this. Army maintenance costs, fleet maintenance, fort maintenance. Well, we'll actually take the fort maintenance down one level. So hopefully they won't be attacked and we won't need to because they won't be as prepared. But we'll keep the army and the navy maintenance up well enough to just hopefully decreases our costs. And we're going to do Pearl of Lower Egypt. So Pearl of Lower Egypt. Lower Egypt is our home as well as the center of our country. We must grow the economy of our home region and renovate the capital itself to make a shining center of civilization that it deserves to be. This mission will deal with the development of Lower Egypt. This will include embellishment of our capital in Alexandria, increased food supply development, maritime trade. Now there's also decisions here. Oh, should we do one of these? The Pharaoh's Lighthouse or the Temple of Muses? I would say the Lighthouse is better for your economy, but I think we're going to wait. These are sort of missions too, but not nearly as well developed. Not the reading the story, just clicking the results is how all Paradox play. People read my events and whatnot and things when I make mods. I want people to read the events. Drunken Barbarian, but maybe everyone just hovers over the costs. I hear you. I want honest feedback. Don't just say things that make me feel better. Let's see. Yeah, you are kind of forced to do lots of battles yourself since you will perform so much better and the sieges are a bit messy. Yeah, it's sort of the sieges and the assaults on the cities are sort of messy. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if any of how much you can watch my videos on Field of Glory Empires, which if you also own Field of Glory 2 will allow you to actually fairly quickly, all things considered, but it is sort of clunky, is the game you say export it out and it will export it out and automatically launch the other game, bring you into the game. Hello, helicopter. Bring you into the other game, and then you select, import the battle, and then you fight the battle, and then you export that battle back to the results from it back to the other game. And so you have a well thought out, tabletop miniature style battles that work really well, I think. You have to do city sieges, city assaults within the sort of Empire's simplified battle system, though. So there's good and there's bad with that. So, okay, so we're going to start this mission of Lower Egypt. Start mission. Okay. This is how it works. I know I've played through this, actually this mission a couple of times now, but this may be new to those who haven't played the game in a while. They've added this new mechanic. I like this new mechanic. It sort of directs you on it. I've only done missions based on Egypt. Okay, and so each one of these has, across the window here, sets of goals. Now here, you pick one or the other. That's why you see, you can sort of see that, can we know? But hey, thanks for following. Do appreciate that. And those on YouTube, if you like, you can hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. You'll see the statue sort of crumbling. So basically here is bread and circuses, and this is sort of a bonus if this were happening now just for 10 years, where this one would be a bonus until the end of the game. So I normally go with the end of the game because I prefer long-term results over short-term, or long-term benefits over short-term. And so you work your flow chart through here, and so you have to get through all three of these to flow into this. This is sort of a side one that you can do or skip, but you need to flow down through here, through the flow chart to here, and then one of these ultimate outcomes you get to pick, and the other two go away, and that finishes the mission. If for some reason you can't complete it, you can abort it, or if you just wish to go through it. And the missions can take, there's not a time limit. They can take as long as they take in the number of game time. So, okay, so Eastern Delta, and it conveniently highlights the places. Okay, Eastern Delta has all farming settlements are producing, or all food producing settlements are producing, have a farm. So we've got to build farms there. Garion, or however you pronounce it, that's down here. You need to set this up as a city and make it the capital. This is representing, which is very real. We already see a little bit here of Ptolemy's attempts to settle Macedonians, and I talked about this earlier in the series, on lands as sort of colonies to, one, control, be a sort of a retired but professional soldiers that are basically in some level of retirement but can be called to arms when needed, as sort of a control element against local revolts, but also the idea of either you are sort of this militia soldier that may be called up for full-time if you're going to a major war, or just sort of around, or that you may retire there, that you're trying to change your phalanx soldiers from being mercenaries, which is especially in the first two generations after Alexander the Great, they very much would have been, we would think of them as mercenaries, into loyal because they own land, and if Ptolemaic, general perception of Ptolemaic dynasty doesn't survive, you will ultimately lose your land. So instead of cash payments, land payments. And so this represents that. And then the Nile trade here, this is starting out, there's other ones down here. They want each of the ports to have city status and to be fortified. So we have to create a new city and fortify each one of these. So yes, okay, so this is now just spending here. So we got to increase all of these. You can see they're nicely highlighted. It can be here. Build farms, and that's one of the reasons I wanted to get building costs down, because it's going to cost us 92 to build each one of these, as well as time. Now another thing that's going to take a lot of time here, so we will come down here and build it, is turning this into a, it also cost us 170, as well as the political points, turning that into a city, founding the city out here, which paid in land. Britain made, and I'm not going to enumerate all of them right here and now, but made a bunch of serious mistakes with their empire. They did not learn the lessons taught by losing the American colonies. They just continued to do the same damn thing and expected to get different results. Now, they sort of did, particularly in Canada, because it was populated by the Loyalists. So they sort of self-selected Loyalists and moved to Canada. But in the other colonies, they continued to sort of do their same policy. So we won't go into all the mistakes. But you're right. One of the things they didn't do, and you can't pay off in land back in Britain, there just isn't enough of it. But what they didn't do is to secure out parts of their empire, especially parts of their empire that was well populated, meaning, generally speaking, like Australia, New Zealand. New Zealand maybe not so as much, but Australia was populated, but not densely populated, where like India or Africa is fairly densely populated. They didn't do a sort of spend 10 years in the British Empire, British Army or Navy or wherever, and then, get a retirement settlement out, and if you live on the land, you'd have a farm, not like big plantations or something like that, but just a good farm, meaning that you hire a few locals to do it, but you are also a farmer. Obviously this would self-select out people that want to be farmers. Give them a good bit of land somewhere, places maybe like Kenya or wherever, and to settle on them. And then you say, yeah, but you've got to be there for 10 or 15 years, and then you get to own it. So then at that point you could sell up and move back to London or Britain or wherever you want to go or whatnot, but you don't just get it and then able to cash it out to somebody who has cash to buy it, whether somebody else who wants a small farm or somebody who wants to own a big, huge farm, just buying up all the parcels. So make them sort of stay there to hopefully raise a family, hopefully have a significant loyal population that you would keep armed, unlike normal British tendency to keep civilians from being armed, but keep former soldiers armed. And maybe as part of the tenants to being there, whether you want to call them, like you call them inside Britain, territorials, or some sort of, reservist militia, but with the idea that they're not going to be called up this is also, I'm saying, start this in the 18th century, not just, in 1945 or something too late, but, start the traditions up like that earlier on, and sort of focus it, not spread it all over the empire, but have it sort of certain regions that you settle people on. But that they would stay there, stay armed, and be sort of territorial in the sense that, yeah, if you're, you can't, I'd love to have a floating map that we can talk about. Can't really quite get down to Kenya here, but if you're down in Kenya here, yeah, you can be called up to sort of this region of, British Africa, or if you were talking India, maybe it's because it's sort of, what is it, the Calcutta, Madras, the three sort of managerial departments of British India. Boy, I'm slipping now. But to sort of do that, you wouldn't be called outside of your, area of things. So like if, the mutiny, the Indian mutiny, or some other reason to be called out, even World War, but you just end up being the local militia in case the Japanese are, or whoever it might be, are invading. But otherwise, you're not going to be called far from your home for long periods of time. Assam is just a region. There was the sort of Calcutta headquarters there. Then is this Madras down here, or where? There was one down here that sort of managed this part, and then there was the other, the other one over here. They're sort of the three British headquarters area that divided up. First the British East India Company, but then the administrative zones maintained after that was converted over to official royal. One was Madras, one was Calcutta, and the other one was, I forget, Bombay maybe. But this is like a lot of stuff going on, like during the Napoleonic Wars, or predating it with Wellesley, or later known as Wellington, and his conquests around there. And so that you have a ready, loyal military force that was there, that would practice, would train, but is mostly settled, and not just there for, hey, let's make some money as a clerk or some business manager in India, and then once that's over, we're coming back. Once we made our fortune or made enough money to come back, and we're going to move back to England and open a pub or something like that. Once we're done, but try to get them to stay, and not just randomly place them all over India, but carve out areas, what would, sort of like this, pick a few nice regions that, not to replace the local population, but sort of concentrate them so that if there is a local mutiny, there's enough of them to congregate together, but create local zones of Anglo-ness, as it were. And that would have helped hold the British Empire together much better, much longer. But that's just only one. And he just did that, the empire would have still fallen apart. The biggest thing is they didn't effing learn. You needed to have members of parliament outside of the British Isles. They don't need to have, because with all the rotten boroughs and whatever in Britain at the time, but even later on, they didn't need to have equal representation. Just the idea of sending a member of parliament or two from, a few of, especially the Anglo colonies, like the American colonies, but they didn't learn, the ones that broke away on the 4th of July, declared their independence. But even once they got Canada sort of settled with loyalists, they should have just picked, we're going to give now they're going to have, let's say, divided up politically, 5 members of parliament. That's not going to change the balance of power really at all in parliament. And they're, sometimes they're fighting for every little vote to keep, keep support for the prime minister, certainly. But just because they're colonists doesn't mean they're going to go to one party or another. And so, and I'm not, again, and as people were more racist back then, of course, not saying that you give it to just everybody, or even non-sort of Anglos, if you will, but at least having them around, having members, and having actual, voted members of, and from a realistic sense at the time period, again, not my current view, what I would do as a person today, but back then let's give the vote to the British that have settled there, either temporarily, so they're sending not a member of parliament from where they're born or raised in England, but voting for a member of parliament out here, that goes back and represents them, whether they're just going to be here temporarily or deciding to settle, but also give citizenship to the British, the British who have children with local women, or potentially there were some women who had children with Indian, whether it's husbands or just Indians, but establish them as British citizens and let them have the vote, and their children have the vote, whatever race they marry into, but maintain those records so that yes, there would be some brown people voting and some brown people going to the British Parliament, but they would be ever so few, and they would all be, at least to some degree, descendants of British citizens. That might still not have held India today as a whole, but very well might have had sort of like super Hong Kongs in an essence, carve out areas that, if you're a British imperialist and want to have that, and that hopefully the carve out would be a bunch of people who actually want to be part of the British Empire, both in the modern sense, both those descended from Britain, but also those, like we see a lot of Chinese that are not descended from Britain, and in Hong Kong that are really, really pissed now. They were sort of like, okay, yeah, we're going to have we're going to be Chinese. We're not going to be ruled by the British far off and not, be colonies. Colonies are subjects of other people. So we're sort of ashamed of it. Now they're all going, God, we wish we were ruled by the British now. Probably about 90% of 70% of Hong Kong probably right now wishes they were still actually ruled by the British right now. So yeah, yeah. I think of one of the countries that fought us for independence had catchy saying about representation. Absolutely, and see that's the idea of that, not necessarily have equal representation. And so in a modern day sense, places like Canada, Australia, New Zealand would have representation in the British Parliament, but have something of a federal system so that they have their own local, however big of a political entity, whether it's literally could be like a local city council or a Australia-wide parliament, or just a New South Wales or wherever wide parliament, however you organize that up. So sort of a federal system. So they have at least some representation in Westminster, but not saying equal as per percentage of the population or whatever, as an Englishman would have, living in England would have, but still have some representation. So they mostly govern themselves, and this would have held at least the Anglo part of the British Empire much better together, so that they would govern themselves locally, but they would all have input for the, if you will, empire-wide decisions. So they at least have some sort of, oh, well, yeah, but there we can go into, well, I'm not going to go into the detail of that on the handover, and I think I could have done a better deal for them. I think I could have kept them. I think I could have kept them in. Okay, here's since what's happening in Hong Kong is a thing right now, and it's American independence, and there are probably more people there singing, or there's a higher percentage of Hong Kongers wish they were also American now. And back when they were really doing a lot of the demonstrations, they were often singing our national anthem and carrying our flags. So this is sort of an appropriate today on the 4th of July to mention this. How I would have kept Hong Kong. China said that they would invade. They might have. They might have. I don't know how serious that was. And of course, now, of course, this is serious. Britain could have nuked, outside of Hong Kong, not right on the border, but, out enough that would probably stop an invasion, without overly irradiating the city of Hong Kong. So that's why I say out of ways. But had China, even without the, nuking thing, but had China just invaded and fought Britain at that time back in 97, when Clinton was in office, when they were trying to get into the, World Trade Organizations, they were much weaker back then economically than they are today, much less developed, much poorer. If the U.S. and Europe and the other Western world, Australia, New Zealand, came out in a declarative sentence that if you invade Hong Kong, we will put a complete boycott, if not an naval embargo on your country. That probably could have kept them from invading. But the real question was the 100-year lease. Yeah, but I don't know that China had missiles. Well, they could get to Britain. See, America's a lot closer. Shooting missiles at America is closer than shooting missiles at Britain. So I don't know that and now, yeah, trust me, I was thinking of that, but I don't know. And what's the point of nuking Hong Kong if, so I don't know. And China really, at least back then, didn't really have, I don't think, any ballistic missile submarines that could readily sit off Britain and nuke Britain. Again, that's probably not a realistic thing to do. But the economic thing, and seriously meant, probably could have kept them from invading. But you had the 100-year lease on the new territories coming up. China, whether the Chinese government, they always scream about unequal treaties, unequal treaties. Well, okay, one, name me an equal treaty ever in the history of mankind. Two, name me an equal treaty that China ever gave to anybody else when it was sort of the victors in wars or economic situations prior, when it's, was the power in Asia. Zero, they will be able to say, you'll be able to give me an example that I will accept as an equal treaty. So that unequal treaty BS is just BS for their own populace, their own nationalistic populace. So that's, the full UN sanction and the NATO blockade of the Chinese coast. Yes, that kind of thing. They did that over the invasion. But you have but China acknowledged that Hong Kong, the island, was in perpetuity British territory. But the new territories, which is about of modern day Hong Kong, I think about 2/3 of the landmass, and a lot of the support elements, like water for the island, actually is over in the new territories, and undersea piping or whatever that runs that. So Hong Kong itself, as a they could depopulate it, move out 3/4 of the population, and move them somewhere else in the Anglo world, which may be what's happening now to the Hong Kong citizens, because I think Britain's going to offer them, and the U.S. may also offer Hong Kongers the right to immigrate to our countries. So China may get Hong Kong and be very pleased that they've, fly the actual now Chinese Communist flag over Hong Kong now, and that may please the domestic population, but they may lose 70+% and probably the most industrious percentage of people from Hong Kong as they flee out. And those that sort of could but won't may make sure that they have British passports or American passports or something, so if it gets too bad, they'll leave. If they can't do business while trying to get their families out beforehand. So they may just lose the population, the industrious, semi-westernized Chinese population anyways. And that's the real jewel of Hong Kong, not the physical location. Not the physical location at all. And that Shenzhen, which is just literally right across the border from them, is a much bigger city, much more industrialized, much more tech development going on there than Hong Kong. Hong Kong is not, in a way, that important as a location. It's the trading center, and you could just pick up and move it. I don't know, to Manila or some other sort of city somewhere. You can move all those people over to Taiwan. Taiwan is also basically offering, hey, come on over to Taiwan. We're all welcome over here too. My understanding is the current government of Taiwan, which is very much anti-unification right now. So, and anti-CCP. Is also offering to come on down. So that just may all move to Taiwan. But so the city itself is maybe not viable without the new territories. And if Britain doesn't give back the new territories, that looks really, really bad and gives China social credits have been deducted from your account. Yes. I already know that I have so many deductions on my social credit status, arresting Hong Kongers who are trying to flee here. Yeah, I don't know. I know there's arrests. I actually follow some Twitter accounts. There's China Uncensored, which is a YouTube news sort of channel that I follow a lot of their videos, that they weekly put out a couple of videos. And since the Hong Kong thing blew up, they're really Hong Kong focused, though they're really just an anti-CCP, and I think somewhat attached to the Falun Gong movement of Chinese outside of China. So they're very, very anti-CCP. I think honest in their reporting, but it's definitely a viewpoint of anti-communist China viewpoint. So I would recommend. So I sort of kind of know. I think most of the people they're actually arresting, that maybe whether they're fleeing or not, are the activists, or people they see as activists, drunken barbarian, as opposed to just people leaving. But we'll see how that goes. I don't know how many because there's 7 million Hong Kongers, like 5 to 7 million. I don't really know how many they can practically arrest. Obviously, they have 2 million Uyghurs. If China really wants to go horrendously bad, they could arrest the 5 million or so that may want to leave. But probably they can't stop them if they start just doing an orderly evacuation and go. But if I were the British, going, okay, and realizing 2 or 5 years before the, you have to start this a few years before the 100-year lease is up, I would have gone to them, to the Communist Party of China, go, yeah, I want to negotiate another 100-year lease, or at least a 50-year lease, 50 or 100-year lease. But start off with a 100-year lease. And they're going to go, nope, 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 nope. And then I would whisper in their ear, if you don't sign us, I think it's much, much better, Martek, is the short thing. And I've been enjoying my playthrough. I have a much deeper in playthrough. Been enjoying it quite a bit. Just sort of the short answer to your question there. So I would have whispered into their ear, if you don't sign an extension to this lease, and this was back when Taiwan was still much more Republic of China than it is today, I'm going to switch British diplomatic recognition from the People's Republic of China as the de jure, not just de facto, but the de jure government of China, from you to the Republic of China. And I'm going to negotiate turning over the new territories to them, and part of the negotiation will be a joint Anglo-Chinese defense force, so that we will an administration of the new territories, not of Hong Kong, but of the new territories, so that they will now be facing across the border, not just with some both British and Chinese ethnic peoples in British uniform, but also people in the nationalist uniform. And that's how I will get around world opinion of honoring our 100-year lease, by turning it over officially back to the Republic of China, but while, as part of that, keeping the sort of also British administration rights or whatever. So we'll still be there. So you can't just invade Taiwan and take it. You're still going to be fighting our soldiers too. And do you want that precedent of, one, we're recognizing, the Republic of China, and two, that this is now Republic of China territory? I think they would have signed the lease extension, at least for 50 years. At that time, back in 96 or 95 or whatever, I think they would have signed. That's how I would have got them to sign. And I would have done if I was Portugal, I would have done the same thing with Macau, and offered to say, yeah, we're going to give it back to it. How would I compare it to Field of Glory Empires? I love the Field of Glory Empire / Field of Glory 2 switchover mechanics. That is a much better battle system than this. What I don't like is sort of the decadence and whatever legacy tokens system. I don't like the ruler system, the personality in charge system in Empires. I just don't like either of those things. I sort of like the idea that each territory, province, or whatever you want to call it, can build buildings without spending money from your treasury, but just has a limited manpower in each province, and how much manpower you put to building buildings versus trading, or manpower to growing food, is a management situation that way. So the provinces that can be developed, so it's not just centralized government. I don't like the yearly turns in Empires. I like the real-time, which also that you have the yearly, it's quarterly turns is standard for Rome 2. The mod I played, I forget the name of it. It's one of the videos series in there if you want to look it up. If I heard the name again, I would remember. But the mod turned it, I think, to monthly turns, which was better for Rome 2. But I like the real-time situation better in Empire's Rome. So all of those three games I just mentioned, which I've played fairly much, all have their better aspects than the other, in my opinion. None of them alone meet all of my requirements. That's sort of a long answer. I don't know if that answers your question, Martek, but that's sort of, I guess, my sort of somewhat quick analysis, trying to think and compare. Thank you, Drunken Barbarian. I'd love to be the emperor of the world, or the emperor of the British Empire, or something. I, I am an imperialist, but I also understand. Trust me, I understand why the Irish want to be independent from England. The Irish were, my big heartache really starts with Cromwell in Ireland. Not just because I hate Cromwell, but also the way he behaved. Yeah, I know some of the stuff starts with King James. I'm not talking about the Elizabethan conquest, but when King James of Scotland, that becomes King of England, starts settling Scottish settlers in Ulster. Yeah, that sort of starts it, but he didn't behave nearly as badly as Cromwell does. Then, of course, the whole potato famine, as well as other, things going on in Ireland. So I understand why nations want to be, including my own, want to be separated from English rule. But as from the movie Exodus, great movie about one of the formation stages of Israel, one of the Jewish one of the Jews that are smuggling Jewish people into the Palestinian Mandate is talking to a Greek Cypriot. The Greek Cypriot says something like, no one wants a foreign ruler, but if you're going to have a foreign ruler, it's best to have an English foreign ruler, or something like that, or the English are the best foreign rulers, or some such thing. Now, it's different when you're generally an Anglo country, like Canada, like the US, like Australia, like New Zealand, just to give examples. The British are just more distant rulers than foreign rulers, if you will, though, as you guys can tell with talking with me, I am not English or Scottish, but I am a mutated version of them, which in some ways I think some of my mutations make, and I'm talking culturally, of course, make me better than the English, because I think the English have lost their general, and this obviously individuals are different, but their general self-reliance on solving problems, where the Australians and the Americans, don't know how much the New Zealanders, but maybe them too, just don't know on New Zealand, have kept self-reliance. Like if you have a plumbing problem, if you try to fix it yourself, you don't just call the plumber or the electrician or something. There's much more of that in England than here. The idea of self-reliance is more of an American and Australian thing than you find back in England, at least as I understand the stuff, having visited and lived in Scotland. But yeah, so yeah, I think some of the colonials do things better than the English. Doesn't mean that they have to do it the way the colonies do it, but just that's my viewpoint. Okay, let's see, what are some of the you're out here mocking backroom deals with the PRC. Yes. The only positive thing I can recognize about it is the map aesthetics. Well, the map aesthetics, but also the map detail is, I think, much better than, I think, even Imperator Rome, or Rome 2. Definitely better than Empires. I like the ability of, because what we can do is we can click, why can't we, we have to get to civics advanced level 4, then we can build roads directly instead of the sort of pseudo road system in Empires. There's a lot of good things. The whole sort of imperial families and characters, this is set to show families, but we can also just show characters, which has a lot of non-family types that aren't a member of a specific family as well, that can fill a lot of offices here, fill these offices here. I know there are generals to command in Imperator Rome, or no, Empires, boy, I'm jumping around doing the names wrong, but just the better system with this. I don't like, one thing I really didn't like when I tried a mod for medieval Total War Medieval 2 or whatever, was the idea that you need to send out an ambassador as a figure on the map. That might work better for the medieval world, but the slowness in moving around in the classical world I did not like. When I tried to play their sort of classic era mod for, the medieval game, that sort of made it everyone is saying it's so much better than Rome 2, and maybe in some ways it is, but I just didn't like the diplomatic system there. I don't mind a bit of a delay between, sending out an ambassador message, but it takes just a week or two at most to get across this sea. And it doesn't take years to wander around this part of the world. You can do it in months or less. So, yeah, well, whether it's laziness, which I'm not going to dispute that, but it's also, shall we say, specialization as much as anything else, as how I would say with the English, is as opposed to self-reliance, on things. So it's more of a and not trying to do things outside of whatever you specialize in. This is how I would see it. Now, maybe you want to see it as lazy. I'm not going to dispute that. Maybe just because I'm lazy anyways. Things I love doing. And it can be physical things too, not just like sitting here talking to you playing games, but physical things I really enjoy doing. I'm not lazy about. But other things that I don't enjoy doing, I am lazy about myself, so I don't know. I know some people just always feel they need to be active and want to do and build things much more than I do, but yeah, something of a perspective. So yeah, I've yet to find the one game that fills all my needs for grand strategy classical. How's the beard growing? Well, I have a goatee. I shaved the big sort of beard a while ago, but it's sort of growing out again. I'm going to shave it again here. Normally I kept it much shorter than I let it go, but it got really sort of biggish. Big beard for a while. I mean, 2 inches or longer, full sort of beard, 2 inches longer. Biggest one I ever had in my life recently, because of the sort of COVID beard just not going out and not stop bothering shaving for quite a while. Okay, so Omen power improve. Okay, but we're not going to be spending much money on this, so we're going to continue this. Okay, we're still at 2,000 here, so we are. We need to fortify this city. We're creating this to be a city, and then we'll need to fortify it. And this needs to be fortified, so we're going to spend the money here to build a fortress, which is not a lot for the fortress. And because I haven't entirely forgotten, been really enjoying these topics. Okay, we need to create a city down in Garon, or however you pronounce that, which is down here. So what we need to do is come here to build and do found city. We have both the money and the prestige points, and then once we do that, we'll move the capital from here to there. That will get that. And then we'll have 2 Macedonian citizens appear, which will be sort of forming our Greek colony and deep into Egypt in the desert. Okay, the Nile trade again. We're fortifying the cities and creating the new city. Then we will want to create markets, and 2 markets in each of those cities that we're just doing. Now in the Eastern Delta, we want to do food producers in all 7 food producing provinces. Some are livestock. Arid area. Oh no, I don't want to trade. I'm hitting the wrong things. Build here. Yes, I actually do know what I need to do. Here, this is vegetables. We can build a farm. Up here, more livestock. Build a farm. And vegetables out here. That's salt. Papyrus. Well, That's papyrus. This is cloth. Okay, so I think we now have a farm building in all 7 locations. Oh, and then once, because we can look ahead, Eastern Delta, we're going to do the granary. Okay, we'll need 2 granary buildings here. Okay, good. We have 2 free slots. I did actually sort of leave them free. We'll just pay for one at a time so we don't deplete this too much. What can you comment about modern Greek so-called Macedonian name dispute, if you know about? Yes, I do actually know about the subject, and I actually follow several people on Twitter that are Greeks that sometimes post in English, but as much or more I have to do the translate tweet about it. At first, when you know the what is the name of the country? The former Yugoslavian province called Macedonia, or whatever that it's officially called to get recognition into the UN. When that first came about, I wondered, well, why the hell not just call it Macedonia? You know, because it does contain some of the territory, not so much the heart. As we can sort of, this is more or less what we're seeing, well, seeing here is more or less the heart territory of Macedonia. Which, if we look at that, most of this, not all of this, but most of this is sort of in modern day Greece. Some of these top sort of things, I think, are in that sort of Macedonia. To my understanding, well, and all of that territory basically all of it, or the good chunk of it, was annexed over by Bulgaria during World War II. My understanding, and again, I will state very much, I don't care about anybody's skin color, hair color. I'm not talking about anybody's genetics here. I prefer the term genetics over race, because race has a changing meaning. I'll say this. If you go to the 19th century or before, you often find the term race being used, including, in some cases, the race of, like, Muslims. And so people like Churchill come off to be very racist because he used the term race and disparaging races. The way they used it, especially growing up, and I'm not saying he wasn't a racist, especially by modern definitions. What I'm saying is the way they often use race. They will talk about the British race is so much different than the French race. And talking by people that know that people like Churchill and others that are elites are Normans. Now, Normans are Norsemen that settled in France, but they're also, you know, descendant of Bretons that came back. And they're settled, a lot of their elites are Huguenot French, that they consider British. So genetically, they're not talking about people significantly different. They weren't thinking about, when they're talking about the British race or the English race versus the French race, they're not really talking about any goddamn genetic thing. About your skin color, eye color. I'm not saying it didn't matter at all. I'm not saying that there weren't true racists that thought the French were genetically somehow inferior to English or vice versa. I'm not talking that there weren't those people. I'm talking about common usage, talking about the British race thinking that they're superior to the French race. I'm trying to use non-inflammatory terms here and examples. And talking about superiority, because they didn't use the term white race mostly. Sometimes maybe a little bit, but often they would talk about European. White, the whole white thing is more of an American creation, I would say, at least in the modern context. But you can find a lot of late 19th century, very early 20th century, sort of the Edwardian age and whatnot. And they use the term race, and a lot of times they're meaning cultural groups, not genetics, not skin color. And I don't know how accepting they would be of different people. But I do know to this day, in places like Britain, where I have some experience of, a lot of British people don't like foreigners. A lot of British people don't like foreigners. And you hear that on the BBC of how terrible these people are. But you know, a lot of the people that don't like foreigners, they don't like the people in the other damn, county. That's the foreigner to them, almost. And whether it's, the Scots or the Welsh, enough different, or the foreigner from the big city and they're in the country. Outsiders, to this day, and this is maybe what would be more appropriate to call them, is a lot of English people don't like outsiders. And because being an outsider to Britain, I sort of moved around and I knew people that some were very much part of British aristocracy. Won't go into details, but I wasn't their best friends, but invited to, hey, whenever you're in this area, just let me know. You can stay at my house whenever you are. So long as the family isn't residents, because it gets sort of crowded here. But if the whole family isn't here, you can just stay, gamer. Of course, they knew my real name and whatnot. But yeah, just let me know. Just give me a day's notice, and you can stay at my house anytime you want. That's how well I knew these people. Okay, that they were inviting me, not just that they'd met me, but they were inviting me to stay in their house. So I've known some people at the upper echelon of British society, and then of course I knew a lot of common working people in British society. All of British society is organized in different social groups. And either you're a member of that social group or you're an outsider. And I was obviously an outsider to all of these groups, but I was sort of the interesting American outsider. So I was sort of accepted as the interesting outsider, that was interesting, but I wasn't one of them. I'm not saying they were being unfriendly, unkind. Some were. I won't go into details. Just sort of snide remarks and whatever. But as the British know how to do, some were. But many were being very kind, very welcoming. But I wasn't like made to feel the outsider. I could just tell I wasn't one of them. And that's just the way British, and this is poor people, rich people, but it's more social group. Northerner, Southerner, Londoner versus rural Southerner. Britain is organized this way, and I know, Drunken Barbarian here as being a British person. I know he's Welsh, but that's why I use my language very carefully, everyone. When I'm talking British, I'm sort of talking, maybe the Scots, definitely the Welsh and the English, probably the Northern Irish, but Britisher can span to all of, the United Kingdom as it currently stands. Or sometimes I'm talking about the English or the Welsh or the Cornish or the Scots or the Highland Scots or the Lowland Scots or the Glaswegians or the Lothians, which are sort of the Edinburgh types. Trust me, I know there's all these different. Thank you, Drunken Barbarian. Yeah, and so I'm not trying to explain Britain to the British that may be watching now or watching later. I'm trying to explain it, whether it's to the other Europeans or to the Americans or others out there. And like I said, I have fairly extensive travel experience in Britain and hanging out past just the usual sort of tour bus. I've been on tour bus tours. They're great. And you meet all the people that work in the tourist industry. And of course, their job is dependent upon that. So they have, obviously their sort of welcoming aspect because they're paid to. And they may like tourists, but I'm talking just getting out, living there in amongst other people too. So Britain is a very sort of socially closed society, and it is really hard to move between move out of one social group and into another social group. It can be done. A famous example of this would be Margaret Thatcher. You can listen to a few of her very early recordings when she first becomes a member of Parliament. She speaks like a regional Briton. I forget exactly where from. And it isn't a real low-class accent or anything like that, but it is sort of a regional middle class. I'd have to listen to it again to maybe describe it better, but something like that. Compared to the English that she spoke by the time she becomes prime minister, she changes her persona. She she never is fully accepted into the sort of gentleman's club system from, coming out of Eton and going through Cambridge and Oxford, so they call it Oxbridge, but Cambridge and Oxford, that sort of elite social class group. She's not part of that, but she is accepted as a, no longer working class kind of Briton because she does morph herself up. And she has lots of talent. She is not just a climber, as they often use the term in Britain, just to climb. She actually has that talent. So in her way, she is accepted. And so she does change her standing. And people do this all the time in Britain, but it is a shocking minority, at least from the American perspective. Shocking minority of people who do change they'll change their economic status long before, either go up or go down and, get more money or less money before they'll change their social status in Britain. So that is Britain, and that is part of Britain's closed system. That is ultimately why they didn't learn from the problems of the American colonies. They didn't know how to allow colonial Anglos that morphed their culture a bit by being colonials, but were still exceptionally close to being Anglos, to allow them to integrate well back into their system. They just didn't see that as a thing. And so that sort of falls apart. So so foreigners, people that are foreign to whatever that group is, whether it's the old, obviously most all the mines are closed in Britain now, coal mines and whatnot, but the sort of old mining communities, the old industrial communities, whatever, that are still around, and they're trying to revitalize industry in Britain, and they someday may start mining again. Okay, so these people don't like foreigners. It isn't really about what skin color you have, it's just that you're not us, whatever us defines within British society. And I'm not saying they're wrong to have these ideas, because it's very human tribalistic viewpoints. It's what we come from. It's morphed in America because partially just coming to new worlds, and you're no longer I'm sure that the Briton who leaves Britain and goes to work, say, in France or in Germany or whatever, and then hangs out with British people that have made that move, they're no longer worried about what part of Britain or what social group they were in Britain. Now they're just the British abroad, so they commingle better. Now they may become this other sort of British group. Whether they go back to being, if once whatever the job, the whatever goes back over, they may go back to being whatever original British group they were. Thank you. I think that's a very loud motorcycle. Go back to being that, reintegrate to their old groups, and not forget their friends, but no longer part of the close social scene that they may have had. They may have not do that. They may or may not do that. I don't know how much. But that's sort of what happens when you move to the colonies, is that whatever the old social group, that sort of goes away, and it's not readily refounded again. So we don't have that aspect of Britishness here in America. Okay, so that's back on race thing. And 19th century, you talk about the French race, the English race, they're not really talking about genetic things in many cases. Sometimes they are, but it's hard to define it. And that's why I don't like using that term. So I'm trying to remember genetics. Okay. What were we saying up here? How does this tie into the name dispute? Okay, I'm just sorry. Yeah, that's where we were. Talking to, or I've actually, DM'd a few people in the sort of Macedonian Greek community in their dispute with the Balkans Greeks. I don't know how much genetically the people in the Macedonian province are what they are. I don't know genetically. A lot of the Greeks say they're not. But what they're very clear about, and is very true, is that they are not culturally Greek. They don't speak Greek. They have a culture very much closer to Bulgarians. I'm not saying it's mainstream Bulgarian culture, but it definitely is closer tied to Bulgarian culture than it is to Greek culture. I think well, obviously this is the 4th of July, and sometimes people don't understand words in the modern thing. There's a bunch of people up in northern Britain, sometimes called Scotland. They don't understand some words up there. One of the words they don't understand is the word independence. They don't understand the meaning of the word. I defy most Scots to understand the word independence, because they keep claiming they're for the independence, and they're really pissed that Britain left the European Union. I know we're still talking about Balkans, but I'm going off on this too, sorry. Independence is in the fucking independence. It's not, what they wanted is not to have their power come from Brussels to London to Edinburgh. They wanted it to go straight from Brussels to Edinburgh. That's not independence. That's separation from England, but staying part of the European Union. See, when I was working, the reason I was staying in Scotland was working for Scottish independence. No one was paying me. I was paying my own money. No one paid me a damn cent. No, I didn't raise any money. No one volunteered any money. I gave my own money to travel, live in Britain, working for independence of Scotland. This is why I'm bitter about it. I thought I was trying to get Scotland to be independent. I wanted it to be a monarchy, but I wanted it independent. I mean, a constitutional monarchy like Britain, it's mostly democratic, but as opposed to the Republic of Scotland, I did not want a Republic of Scotland, but it would ultimately be up to the choice of Scots, and I knew that was going to be a hard, hopefully, plebiscite that we could have, and hopefully the Jacobites would get a Jacobite heir and set up a modern state Jacobite Scotland. That's what I was hoping for. But I was fighting for Scottish independence, fighting for. Which would also be independence from the goddamn Union. Not Confederation, not, some sort of, mutual defense NATO type thing, or common market, or whatever sort of, European common system, or something. No, European Union. Independence is independence. They don't understand that in Scotland. Okay. And again, this sort of jumping over because this is Independence Day for America, yes. When it's appropriate, a monarchist. That is sort of why we have you look at my YouTube channel, you have the painting of the Battle of Culloden, the Jacobites, 1745, the last Jacobite rising. Yes, there's Jacobite stuff going on there. So, constitutional monarchy, when it's right, it's a good thing. When you have a national consensus on the idea of it. It needs to have that. Like you still have a national consensus on the monarchy in Britain. There are very few really Republicans there. So independence, yay, is a good thing. But shall we call it Western Bulgaria, be independent from the rest of Bulgaria? Or would it be more, what? Yeah, I don't know why Macedonia, or the upper territory here, why they haven't moved. Because I understand the language is fairly damn close to the rest of Bulgaria. Why they haven't moved for unification with Bulgaria? Because my understanding is Macedonia here is still a damn poor country. I know, 10 or 15 years ago, remember reading about various economic benefits that they would give companies moving to their region. their nation, whatever. Like if you move and start a new company, no taxes for 10 years and blah, blah, blah. Really good thing. So if I was going to set up a manufacturing company, I would have maybe considered it, for a low-tech company that needed low-skilled worker type people thing, and the infrastructure would have handled it. I would have considered it maybe if I was in that kind of position with the economic benefits. But I don't know that there's been any great economic boom in here. And I think they would have done better, don't know for sure, of unifying with Bulgaria. But maybe there's enough cultural differences that it should be West Bulgaria or some other Slavic name, because it's really a different Slavic culture than anything. Because Philip II, and I don't think you were here when I talked about, he came down to compete in the Olympic Games as an individual, and was turned away because they weren't sure that he was a real Greek. And he was king of Macedonia. Came back the next games with a genealogy that I forget which god that supposedly he was descended from, and they accepted that and let him compete in the Olympic Games. It was more just to compete for the prestige than he ever thought he was going to win, I think. And this was when he was still fairly young. So they were basically a Greek-speaking people. Definitely Alexander the Great, who... Can anybody say without Googling, who was Alexander the Great's primary teacher? Come on, for the win. Who is Alexander the Great's teacher? You've heard of him. I'll give you that hint. It's not some obscure guy that you've never heard of. Aristotle, yes, absolutely. That's it. And that was sort of the hint that you've probably heard of him. So yes, he was taught directly by Aristotle. Philip paid enough money to have Aristotle come up and teach Alexander and Ptolemy and a bunch of other boys that were approximately the same age. Yeah, no, Plato was a bit earlier. Wasn't really around, I don't believe, alive at that point, because they would want to claim the rest of Macedonia as its part of Greece. Well, that was my original sort of understanding. Is that they would want to claim the rest of. Well, you're saying because Macedonia is part of Greece, the region greater than the whole of the country of Bulgaria. Yeah, is it Greece was worried that they would want to claim northern Greece. But from everything I get from people that are on Twitter, noticing I'm qualifying that, whatever the hell that means, but these are activists that are Greeks, that speak Greek. I'm also following some activists that are Greek from Cyprus, the unoccupied part of Cyprus as well, trying to get what's going on in these places. They are really looking at a cultural viewpoint. They're going, you don't speak Greek. Old maps don't show people, 19th century maps. They show this as sort of, when it was still sort of under the Ottoman Empire, before, Lower Greece or whatever was free from the Ottomans, but Upper and whatnot. They weren't showing this as being Macedonia. They, up in here, they were showing this as being Bulgaria or whatever, Bulgarian peoples under the Ottoman Empire. And so they're seeing it very much as a cultural thing, and seeing it as sort of stealing of heritage more than a territorial land grab of the rest of Greece. So I have gone from going, yeah, what's the bother? Let them call Macedonia. It does sort of include at least northern Macedonia as part of the territory. To going, the Greeks are right. The people that live there, whoever may have lived there at one time, maybe at the time of Philip II, time of Alexander the Great, or 50 or 100 years before or after that time period, very well may have been Greek-speaking Macedonians that are currently there. But all of the people, or 95% of the people that are living in that area, have no Greek cultural aspects to them. So they are not Greece. Okay, Marcus, thank you so much. Do appreciate you being. I'm going to be ending this shortly anyways, myself. I don't know if you should trust Twitter users. Yes, notice, it's like claiming Americans on Twitter. Well, good, Arno, coming back. I'm qualifying it because, see, I don't know of a better way to keep touch with what's going on, and I do understand I'm either talking to or just listening to activists. I definitely get that. But I don't know how else to get the information. I mean, they're tweeting news articles. Some of them are in English, some of them are in Greek. When I can copy and paste this stuff, obviously I'm using like Google Translate, which is generally okay to understand the meanings of what's going on. I'm trying to understand the world as best I can. So I don't have the budget because, I could, get a good streaming setup or just, record things and upload from all the world. I would love to travel around and meet more people, I'd love to be more multilingual than I am, but I still can't run around and learn everybody's language. So I'd love to travel more and find people in different localities. And what I'm actually trying to do, and I really love you guys from different parts of the world, and I periodically, if you don't think I remember where you're from, please keep reminding me, because I do want your feedback. I'm trying to use not just like Twitter, but trying to use this YouTube channel to build a community to help me in multiple ways. But it's not just that I want to broadcast to you, whoever you are watching live or later on YouTube. I want to find out about the rest of the world. This is why I often love people like Azads who and Emperor Chaka in Taiwan when he's around, is non-Western voices. Not that I want to agree with them, because often I vehemently disagree with their positions, but I want to learn from other perspectives. So I love the idea of getting people that disagree with me involved in the channel, but also people that can agree with me but are from different parts of the world, to feed me news and information and viewpoints that are different than mine and from different localities, because I as sort of an information source is what I want to use a lot of you for, is for other perspectives, because I don't trust the media, even media companies that I generally agree with, because their viewpoint, and that's fine, but I want to get other voices. So I'm hopefully the YouTube channel, the Twitch channel, my Twitter, there are links to that if you scroll down. If you're into Twitter, I also have a Parlay account now that I'm trying to follow and understand different parts of the world, and that's the best. Twitter is one of the best sort of interactive ways that I've found that I can find some of these people, and so I'm very much trying to follow different things in different parts of the world and trying to collect. I'm a bit of an information collection person, so I'm trying to do intelligence collecting is obviously overstating it, but I'm definitely trying to get more and more perspectives. Like, I haven't been watching, probably haven't watched in 2 months, but I do have bookmarked I guess here's Bhutan, because it's Sikkim, I think that's right. No, maybe Bhutan's over here. That's Bhutan, I think, is the YouTube channel they put out a weekly broadcast in English on YouTube of the national television channel of Bhutan. And it's very interesting. That would be Sikkim, I believe, right? These two. That's Bhutan, I think. Yeah, so trying to find other news sources from around the world that keep me informed, not just what's going on in Bhutan, but what's going on in India in relation to Bhutan, and then what's going on with China in relation to Bhutan, which is very informative of some of the invasions China's been trying to do with Bhutan and whatnot. So I do a lot of that. Okay, well, I guess it's time to wrap this stream up, wrap the episode up. I want to thank you all. I know we've wandered off topic. I hope it was interesting to those live, which, hey, we got 15 people between the two platforms watching. Very good. And those watching later on YouTube, I do appreciate that. So make comments, let people know about the channel. You don't know how much it would help on any sort of social media, or if you print up some flyers and walk around somewhere after COVID's done, handing flyers out that you got to watch Gamer 1745's channel on YouTube, or whatever you may do, promoting it up. It really helps. Even just one more regular viewer really helps. So thanks, everyone. See you next time for more historical gaming and ramblings.